My friends, podcasting has moved beyond a quirky hobby to a ubiquitous brand building resource. And I want to tell communicators out there that you should definitely think about choosing the podcast option. Podcasts are a target rich environment for people looking to reach listeners enthusiastic about their niche. And podcasting's barrier to entry is lower than ever. It's a lot like indie publishing was a few years ago, meaning anyone can get in. But that's also a problem. In indie publishing, anybody with a Word document and a homemade cover can publish an ebook. No editing, no professional cover design required. So a perceived lack of professionalism and quality drove down the market for the indie authors who produce content in a professional manner. Readers often ran back to the big publishers. Now, with podcasting, anybody with a computer or a smartphone can make a podcast. There are 2 million shows out there right now, and quality is undeniably an issue. So I say this, podcast consumers get burned by these amateur shows with poor production values, inconsistent posting schedules, and low host discipline. At that point, the listener is probably more likely to try a show produced by a large media company. Well, why search for shows in your niche, then wade through an overly long, poorly produced show with bad audio? All right, to help that, I'm just firing off my opinions on the subject in a new book called The Podcast Option, produced by Caroline Street Press. It's an ebook aimed at helping indie podcasters up their game. In it, I share my podcasting origin story from 2006 when, as an unsuccessful political candidate, I still had things to say, and my blog just wasn't cutting it. Further, I explain my rationale for transitioning from a hobbyist podcasting mindset to a professional standard right around 2018. The book offers proven podcasting tips, tricks, and advice. The podcast option also offers tips to prospective podcast guests to improve their game. I just think because an indie podcast isn't part of Wonderly or Vox or NPR, some guests don't treat it with quite the same level of seriousness. And to weed that out, my shows have a few hoops for guests to jump through, which I detail in the book. Now, you've probably heard me talk about this before if you're a regular listener to the show, but some of these hoops I'm talking about are not all that outrageous, frankly. My standards are virtually identical to those of any typical broadcast media outlet. Guests or their publicists make an exciting pitch explaining why they want to appear on the show. They offer links to a media kit or website and signify they have an external mic. I do this because I want to hear why they offer value to my audiences. I also want people who literally sound good. The low sound quality of the internal mic in a computer is a turnoff to listeners. However, I must admit some guests have balked at one thing, asking them to commit to sharing their episode with their social media networks. And all I can say to that is one reason why my local TV station invites me back for interviews is because I know the score. I'm prepared, offer no drama. I repeatedly share the interview with my network, and everybody wins. Obviously, if you're an A-list celebrity, you're George Clooney, that's not necessary. Just having George Clooney on your show is all the publicity help you need. But I don't see why folks would go on a podcast, particularly if they're not George Clooney, and then do a zero to promote it to their network. I mean, it's crazy. If you're proud of what you said and you believe in what you said and you think the show went well, I don't see why you're not telling the whole world about it in your e-blast and in your social media. I just don't understand that. Well, ultimately, I hope the book helps you indie podcasters or wannabe indie podcasters out there to improve your competitive edge. Podcasting is here to stay, and shows with efficient processes in place that conduct themselves with professionalism will have a better shot at success. All right, it's all there in the podcast option. It's a fast read. It's an ebook available exclusively on Amazon.com. Again, it's called The Podcast Option. And if you check the show notes, you'll find a link that'll take you there. It's very affordable. I would appreciate if you bought it, read it, and reviewed it on Amazon.com. Thanks again. The book again is called The Podcast Option by yours truly, Alex Greenwood. Thanks again.